Hello, friends, and welcome to the 31st episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. This week's episode features the one and only Andrea Bonaparte. Her and her husband are singer-songwriters, and they also own a company called Black Ora, which originated in Chicago, where they originally met. Black Ora curates shows for independent artists of all genres that allows them to showcase their talents. They also allow them to connect and build kind of a community and further their fan base through these shows. So they have a passion for doing this and love connecting artists with other fans and artists and other talents around the industry. And they are now based in New York, where they do a lot of their shows and do run their business from. So alongside of being business owners, Andrea and Jason are also singer-songwriters. And in the show, Miss Andrea will talk about being a singer-songwriter and how she kind of compiles her emotions into being a singer and songwriter, and how that can make it easier for her to write songs when she's in a high point or a low point emotionally or in a part of her life. So without further ado, I will let Miss Andrea tell her story, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Miss Andrea Bonaparte.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Andrea, and I also go by Aylin. That's my artist name. I am a singer and songwriter, also co-founder of lifestyle brand called Black Ora, which is we throw events featuring up-and-coming independent artists. And we started, my boyfriend and I founded the brand. We started in Chicago, and we moved to New York just about 2 years ago. I'm originally from New York, and I just went to school out in Chicago. So, yeah, that's who I am.
Excellent. So can you tell us a little bit about Black Aura and kind of what happened behind that?
Yeah. So Black Ora started off from basically being my boyfriend and I got together and we realized, Chicago's a very cliquey scene. And so we decided that we should start a brand that, is very inclusive to all different people and all different types of artists. And we also felt like the artists, at least the underground artists that were coming up in Chicago, weren't getting recognized for, all that they were doing. And we felt like we should create a space where we give a platform for these independent artists that aren't signed to any labels. We go out and find the artists. We find them on Spotify, SoundCloud, maybe if it's word of mouth sometimes. And we, we give a platform for these artists. We book the artists, we book the venues. It's not always at music venues. Sometimes it's at, galleries. We've had some shows at Soho House. And so we wanted to create a space for these artists to be able to perform and kind of gain some new fans. And then also for creatives to be able to come together and really feel, welcome and feel like they can have a safe space.
You get these artists at on Spotify and things like that, and then you get them booked for shows. So are you kind of reaching out to them and just on their Spotify or on their Facebook page and just saying, hey, we really like your music. We'd love to book you at X and Y venue or Soho House. Would you be interested in performing?
Yeah, we're mostly reaching out to them through Instagram mostly through email, going to their Instagram and then reaching out to them via email, because how it has that email tab. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of how we get them. And then if they have management or they're signed to an independent label, we'll reach out to whoever the booking people. And so we're not booking them for other shows. We're specifically booking them for our events, because we want to get them on the stage at our events. So.
Okay. So when you're reaching out to these artists and you're kind of finding new artists to book and things like that, what are some things you're kind of looking for? Is there a certain genre you're looking for? Is there a certain like personality?
So we actually feature all different types of artists. So we've had indie bands, we've had rappers, we've had all types of genres, like the main genres, except maybe we haven't had, classical or folk or jazz or something like that. But just, mainly rappers, bands, various other things. We've had some shows where we've had multiple artists in one show, and we have some that are just like focus on one or two particular artists. And then sometimes we have DJs as well to kind of start off the night or, end the night. And then it sometimes becomes like a dance party, so it's fun.
Interesting. So when these artists are performing or when you're looking for these artists, what are some things that kind of make like a good performance? Because sometimes, like, I'm sure you're in like a smaller venue or you're in like a coffee shop, or it kind of really fits like the style of music and kind of the personality and even the audience that the music is kind of going for. So what makes a good performance, or what are some things that you're noticing these artists doing that are really getting the crowd involved, and what are some things that you're noticing that they're not doing that maybe they could be doing to get the crowd more engaged and maybe more into it?
So, for instance, we had one artist. Okay, well, our last show was at this place called Ludlow Coffee Supply, which is in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and we had a band called Sundrop from New Jersey come out. They were a like house funk band, and it's actually a duo, sorry. And they were great. It was the perfect vibe for that particular environment because it was, again, like, a smaller coffee shop. We don't usually do events at coffee shops, but we happen to know the owner, so it just worked out. But it was great, and we had some people sell jewelry, and we had vendors there. So we don't usually do those types of events, but for this one, we kind of had it like a shopping experience and also a performance. And they were great. They interacted with the crowd. It was very intimate, and it was great acoustics and everything. And then at the second to last show that we had, which was at Ludlow House, which is in the Lower East Side, we had an artist named Dove, who's an R&B artist, and she was great. She's been featured on Hypebeast, Paper Magazine, but she was amazing, and actually a lot of her fans ended up coming out, so they knew the words to all of her songs. But she really interacted with the crowd, and even though she, her style isn't really like a hype type of, it's more mellow but it's also beautiful, beautiful vocals, and but yeah, she really got the crowd going, and they loved it. So we're just looking for people who really interact with the crowd and connect to the crowd, and have a great sound.
When you talked about like this experience where like you kind of had like a shopping experience and like all kinds of stuff like were set up, and are those kind of like common things that happen at these shows, or is it like is that kind of like a one-off thing?
Yeah, that was kind of like a one-off thing. Eventually we want to do more shows that incorporate other, whether it's like CBD, like products, and also have, an artist perform, and then have more events that are more interactive, and there's other aspects to it besides, just the performance.
Okay. And when we talk about like being interactive and like different experiences and things like that, what's kind of like your dream show? Like what would be like your ultimate show, like picture perfect I've made it show?
There's a bunch of different Soho houses. But for instance, the West Hollywood, I think, is it no, it's not West Hollywood, sorry, Malibu. I think that would be a really great experience, or like doing something at Art Basel, and kind of having it be like, this isn't like the dream experience, but this is something that we would love to do. Have it by a pool, have, very, people swimming, the performance, just kind of have it like all out, incorporate, some new like technology stuff. There's something that I'm thinking about.
Oh, like VR or AR?
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool, and it would be interesting to see like how something like that, because eventually it's going to be a thing. Like, you're going to go to a concert, you're going to go to a festival or any type of musical experience and be able to put on a VR headset, even from your own home, I can imagine, and just basically experience the concert right in your own home. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that kind of comes up. Like for me, I've tried playing like VR video games or augmented reality video games, and it just makes me very nauseous. So like I'm kind of scared to the point where it's almost going to be like you're not going to get the full experience of going to like a certain festival, and if you don't wear the VR headset, you're going to like miss out on like 85% of the actual experience.
Yeah, I think people are longing for that nowadays, just actual experiences and seeing, being somewhere, because every day we're just on our phones constantly, and it's just like we're looking at our phones, and then it just like takes up so much of our time. And I feel like yeah, I know what you mean though.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'll put it on, but I'm going to be nauseous for the next 3 days over this festival, but I'll do it because, YOLO.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're reaching out to these artists, I want to go back a little bit. When you're reaching out to these artists, you talked about like what you're looking for, but what is kind of that line where you make a decision as to this is an independent artist, or oh, this artist is a little too big for us, or this artist is too small, he doesn't have enough clout yet. Like, where's that kind of line?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are really looking for people that, honestly, it's just about if we believe in, my boyfriend Jason and I, we're both artists ourselves, so we both have a very good ear. And I do feel like we really are able to pick, like, to hear a sound, a new artist, and say, oh, that person's got it, or that person isn't, not quite, So we're not really looking for somebody who has a huge following, although it's important because, again, we do have to sell tickets. We're mainly, like, the main goal is looking at that level of artistry, because eventually that person's going to blow up, or that person's going to become found. But we're really, digging deep and seeing, okay, what is an artist that has that sound. And it's not even like a sound, how in radio they have to have that specific like pop sound. It's not even about that. We are just looking for artists that really have something special, and who don't sound like everybody else as well.
Right.
So that's really important. Like, for example, the next show that we're working on, we're having an artist come out from Atlanta. Her name is Cooley Savant, and she is a rapper, and she's amazing. I mean, her like lyricism is outstanding, and she's actually going on tour. So the New York show will be the show that we're having will be the New York stop. And Yeah, we're really excited to have her. So that will be in Williamsburg in Brooklyn.
Cool.
We're also having some openers that were on her tour as well, I believe, come out for that show as well. So now we're also just trying to book talent we're trying to book an artist, New York artist, to kind of bring in a bit more following as well, so we can really pack this place out.
And when you're looking for like these artists, do you look for them all over the country, all over the world, or is it kind of like try to target like New York?
Well, right now, it just so happened that we had a mutual friend, the Cooley Savant. So she was recommended by a friend of mine. But mainly we're looking for New York artists if it's going to be a New York show. If we have an event, for instance, like, in another city, then we would find the venue, and then we would look for an artist in that city.
When you're looking for these artists and you're booking them out, once you've got them confirmed, walk us through the steps of like, okay, here's what we need to do. Like you have a checklist of here's what we need to do to get the venue booked, to make sure that everything's in place, and then ultimately marketing and getting people to show up to the show. Walk us through that process.
Okay, so basically, and again, sometimes we will actually hear an artist in another city and we'll be like, ooh, we have to get this artist either to New York, or we will come out to whatever city they live in and like we'll find a venue there and like have a show there. So it could be either or, also, just to be clear. But yeah, so marketing the event. So say we have an artist from well, just say like the artist is from New York, right? So we actually make the flyers, and so we make the flyers, or we'll have like somebody do the flyers, but most of the times we make our own flyers, and we will market it on Instagram, Facebook. We'll do Facebook, Instagram ads. We'll do flyers around the city. We'll obviously set up an Eventbrite, mainly we do Eventbrite. And then we will, figure out a ticket price depending on the venue or wherever we're having the event. We will figure out, okay, can this event be ticketed, or are they allowing us to, for instance, Soho House, that's a members only club, or it's a members only club. So that one we couldn't do ticketed. So that was just like a guest list type of thing for us and then the artists. But yeah, mainly we will do it on Eventbrite, have it ticketed, and then we'll post the flyer up there and everything, and then we'll just like mainly market it on Instagram and Facebook. We don't have a Twitter, but I think those are like the main things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because everybody's marketing strategy is a little bit different, and especially with different events and music, like genres and different things like that, like you have to take a lot of things into consideration and kind of make sure that your ads and stuff are targeted to the right audience, and making sure that, they're being shown to the right people and all that stuff. So otherwise, like you wouldn't want to be showcasing like a bluegrass show to electronic music fans, because clearly they're not going to be. I mean, you might get one or two people that are interested, but for the most part, that's not going to be a successful ad. So what are some of your favorite things about the whole process? Like, is it the reaching out and contacting the artists? Is it like the booking the venues? Is it, the shows performing, or is it running the show? Like, what's your favorite part?
Honestly, we wear so many hats because it's just my boyfriend and I. But I love all of it. I think my favorite part is finding the artist and just finding the artist and then jamming out to their music is just like amazing, because again, we're artists and we have such like an ear, and we're so excited about like the artist just in general and like what they could do live. And also like sometimes we'll even go to a show before booking them just to make sure that they do sound good live. That's another important thing. But most times, in most cases, they do. But yeah, I think that's my favorite part, because just like discovering that talent is so exciting to me. Because we believe so heavily in their music. That's so important, because we're not just, picking an artist just randomly because they have, 13,000 followers and, they're going to bring out a great crowd. Like, we're actually really looking for somebody who's going to bring a lot to the table.
I know you have like all these people, like a lot of times you try to watch them perform or listen to their music. So what, do you ever like kind of wing it and just like book them and not like listen to them live or watch them live perform? Like just basically book them for a venue and then they just show up and perform, and then you either realize they're really good or they're not so good, and kind of second guess yourself?
Yeah, sometimes. That's definitely happened. I mean, for instance, like Cooley, we haven't seen her live. We haven't seen her perform live because she's in Atlanta, but we know that she's great. So we don't have any doubts on that. But yeah, I mean, there have been. I think there's like one time that happened, and we were a little bit disappointed that the person didn't wasn't that great, but it happens. That's why you got to do your homework, and part of our homework is watching if they have music videos, watching all their music videos, their content, listening to all of their songs. Do they have an album? Do they have an EP out? Do they have just like a single or two? And that's really important.
I would say like researching these artists is super, super important. And I would assume that like when you go to like you're going and you're finding these artists and it comes to be like, maybe they're not, like their music is really good, but maybe they're not a really good person. Like maybe they're very rude, or maybe they have a very strong opinion on something that you may or may not agree with, or it may kind of influence the show. And like, that's just something like, for example, like religious or political views or something like very, very personal. And like, you don't want it to like get influenced in the show. You just want people to show up, have a good time, and just kind of relax.
Right. That's definitely happened before. Nothing like political, but the person just wasn't very kind and was very like arrogant. And so that's not fun, because then it's like, it's hard to work. Now it's hard to work with you, and we're just trying to put on a show for, people to enjoy, and most importantly also for you to get, more recognition. So yeah, we always like to, that's why it is important to kind of talk to them, and not just, the managers if they do have a manager, but speak to the artist directly and kind of get a feel for them, whether it's on the phone or we meet up or we go to one of their shows to hear them live. That's really important, because we want to see what type of person they are, and then ultimately then also maybe their fans are kind of like the same, or you never know. So, but yeah, that's unfortunate when that happens, but luckily it hasn't happened that often. So
And how do you deal with a situation like that? Do you just kind of like let them go on with the show? Because again, like you don't want anybody showing up to see that there's been a mistake on anybody's end. Like you just want it to be as smooth as possible and then deal with the aftermath.
For this particular situation, we it was a bit confusing because we were working with the venue, and then the venue wanted this guy. So, you know, we kind of just had to roll with the flow of things. But it ended up working out. Like, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. But I will tell you a really terrible experience, and I'm not afraid to say his name either. We had, for one show, I think it was, I don't know if it was last summer. I don't know if you're familiar with an artist named Theophilus London, but he's, you know, was pretty big for a few years, and we booked him. We reached out because we were having, it was, you know, it was our first show in New York that we were throwing. And we had, I believe it was 5 or 6 artists on the lineup, and he was one of them. And luckily we ended up, you know, booking. We were really excited to book him because both Jason and I were really big fans of his. And what ended up happening was, and so he wanted a deposit, so he wanted obviously to get paid. So we ended up, you know, giving him a deposit, or not a deposit, sorry, it was the full amount, for him to come and, you know, DJ. He would be DJing, but performing like 1 or 2 songs. That was the agreement. And we got it in writing and everything. But we haven't been able to track him down. He ended up stealing our money and didn't show up to the show. Like, no show. Like, we got him, you know, all the things that he requested, and he ended up not showing up. His quote unquote manager was extremely rude. It was a really bad experience. It was the worst experience that we've ever had. Because ultimately he stole from us. So yeah, that was unfortunate. And, you know, we had an agreement, and we had it in writing, but it wasn't worth it for us to just, you know, fully track him down. Like, he's not, I think he had his shine already, and so kind of now I don't know what he's up to now. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It happens though.
Yeah, that's definitely unfortunate, and I'm sure like those things are kind of always like not always planned for, but at the same time they kind of are. Like, you always have to take things with a grain of salt, and like you can't trust anybody because, you know, like just things like that, like they get really fishy. Like, oh, I want my full amount up front. Like, that's not usually what happens. Like, usually you can like ask for a deposit, like 50%, but like just things like that, like, oh, he wants a full amount before he's even performed. Like, that's kind of a red flag. And I'm sure you guys were definitely aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, things happen, you live and learn, you move on, because like you said, it's just not worth our time and money and resources to go after him. And, you know, he'll get his time. What kind of music do you guys usually listen to? Like, I know I've heard of that artist that you had just mentioned, but what kind of music do you guys usually into? Like, do you kind of favor towards others or kind of prefer?
We really like a mix of different genres. I feel like nowadays there's so many different fusions of genres that it's hard to even classify an artist and put an artist in a box. Somebody that I really love and Jason loves as well is Kaytranada. He's a Canadian DJ, and he's like a mix of hip-hop, dance, R&B, electronic. He's amazing. And actually that was Jason and I's first concert together ever, in Chicago, so that was really cute. But yeah, I love we love dance and hip hop and kind of like 80s music. What else? there's so many different, oh man, yeah, there's so many different genres. R&B, electronic.
Okay. So you guys like a little bit of everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up listening, like, in my household, I grew up listening to jazz. I listened to, my mom played Brazilian music. She played, R&B, rock, gosh, like, just so many different genres. So I just kind of got a bit of everything, and I think that's why now I have, like, a love for so many different types of music.
I think that's very important for your specific industry and your job, because like it's literally your job and career to search out and seek out, like, so if you're familiar with the different genres and styles and like where they're performing, and like being able to classify, like, oh, jazz does really well at this club, or dance music does really well at this club, or Brazilian music does really good at this coffee venue, or whatever it may be, that knowledge can really help you and kind of target and things like that, I'm sure. You guys also do a lot of songwriting as well, correct? Yourselves?
Yeah.
Okay. And like, what do you write? Like, what's like one of the main genres that you write, or do you just kind of just write freely and just whatever comes to mind?
I honestly just write freely. Songwriting, is definitely something that I have struggled with for a while. I was a writer when I was younger, but I think I just kind of got in my head a little bit as I got older, and like just the whole idea of writing and getting in a studio just kind of like freaked me out a bit. But I just write. Yeah, I write freely. I don't follow any particular pattern. I think it's like poetry, and then I think it turns into a song when I'm in the studio. For me, that's kind of how I work. But I know that so many people do it different ways. But yeah, I definitely write freely. I am inspired by things that I see, things that are happening in my life. I think I'm the most inspired when I'm, sad or lonely or all, those types of feelings. And I think that's common. Most people are. Yeah, I'm trying to work on, writing from also a place of seeing other people and like other relationships and, or my friends' relationships or other people's experience and not just mine, and like turning it into something, turning it into a song and writing, just thoughts and observations. But I feel like it's much more easier if you're experiencing something, then it's so much easier to just kind of like jot it down on paper and turn it, have it be like a poem.
And do you find like songwriting easier or more inspirational to you when you're kind of in a mode of like you're at kind of a peak point in experiencing an emotion such as sadness or happiness or loneliness or anything like that?
Definitely. My latest single was, it's called Through You, and it's on, Spotify, iTunes, all that. And that was inspired by an experience that I had when I was living in Chicago with somebody that I was dating. So yeah, that was, and I'm working on a music video for that as well right now. But that was definitely inspired by an experience that I had and a feeling that I'm a very emotional person, and I'm very in tune with my emotions, and just I'm also a very spiritual person as well. And so I think I've always been like that since I was little, just very, I think a psychic told my mom I'm very like old soul. But yeah, I'm very in tune with my emotions, and I don't let it hinder me, like I feel things, and everybody feels things, and I feel like that's very, we shouldn't shy away from that. We should, express our feelings, and we shouldn't hold things back. And I think that that's really important for growth and, our own mental health. So
I completely agree, because I think in today's age, and I'm sure I've talked about this in a previous episode, but in today's age, like, we are so heavily involved in our phones, and we're so involved in the present and social media and the likes and the follows we're getting, and all that attention we seek in a digital world, that we were dumping so much heart and soul into that when we have kind of a personal experience, whether it be emotional, spiritual, whatever it may be, and we don't really know how to handle that. So we kind of experience that emotion, but it's so overwhelming to us that we kind of lock up. Like for me, I'm one to kind of just kind of bottle things up and try to deal with things. And sometimes that's not always the best thing to do. Sometimes it's good to express yourself and really immerse yourself in the emotion, because these emotions, sadness happens, happiness happens, anxiety happens, like all these different things happen. And when we just try to like push them to the back burner and like fake a smile, it can really like take a toll on us, both physically, mentally, and then it starts putting strains on like familial relationships, significant other relationships, just friendships. And I think this emotion is, I'm sure you can speak to it more than me, because I can write music, but I'm not really a songwriter. Like I would prefer to, well, I guess that would be considered a songwriter, but I'm not really a lyricist is what I meant to say. So when you're writing the music, I'm sure that like experiencing these emotions is probably like 20 times more important and better, and even more, I guess, heightening than like just kind of anybody else that's not really a songwriter or a lyricist, or poet. So can you talk about like how you've experienced like really kind of taken an emotion, you've been like, wow, I'm really upset, or I'm really sad that this situation happened, I'm really happy that this situation happened, and now I'm going to just write everything out and just go and just really embrace this moment in my life?
yeah, absolutely. I think I've like just been in my room, just sitting with my emotions, and I just write it. And it's so funny, I just write it out, and it almost like is like a release, because it feels so much better when you write something out on paper. It's just like getting into an argument and then writing why you're angry, why you're upset. And it's kind of just like, okay, I wrote it out, I got it out, and now it's on that paper. And you feel a sense of relief. So I feel like that's definitely, how songwriting is. And it's a beautiful thing, it's a little, it's definitely like a heightened experience, and it's sometimes overwhelming, and but it is really beautiful, because then you look back on it and you're like, oh my goodness, wow, this beautiful creation, this song came from this emotion. So everything's meant to be, and I feel like, yeah, you have to just get it out, because sometimes that's the only way.
Yeah, you definitely got to get it out, whether it's and everybody has a different outlet. Like some people like to go work out, some people like to read a book, some people listen to music, some people just watch a movie. Everybody has their different outlets, and I think it's important for whether you're a songwriter, a lyricist or not, musician or not, find that outlet so you can express yourself and not hurt yourself, whether it be mentally, physically, or even somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we're just so, I just want to say that, like, our phones are so, I mean, I'm sure people have heard this so many times before, but like it really is so damaging. I'm sure, even me, I'm trying to figure out how to limit my time on social media, because it's almost like my phone is my second hand, right? Like I just have my phone and I'm constantly just clicking Instagram and like looking at, we're all looking at other people's lives, but that's a highlight reel, you know what I mean? Like it's yes, some people are living these great lives, but also most things that are on social media are all for the gram, for, the good things. We're not posting like the pimples on our face or like I just cried because I just got in an argument with my mom or my boyfriend or whatever. So I just think that it's important to kind of limit that time because, again, like I just started practicing meditation actually because I found that I was, I had a lot of, anger and built up anger. And so I needed to do something to release. I actually did transcendental meditation, and it's has been really great, and it's changing. I could see people have told me that they see a difference in me, and then I'm more calm, and not that I was just like really angry, but it's definitely something that has helped me tremendously. And I think that we all need something, whether it's working out or meditating is great though. I would highly recommend meditating. But yeah, we all need something to besides we can't always look at our phones, and just let's limit our time on social media and for our own mental health.
I think it's important for people to, rather than living through other people, I think you should live through yourself first. And then, like you said, I've never heard it mentioned as a highlight reel, but watch your own movie and participate in your own movie and on your own set before you watch other people's films and critique them and watch their highlight reels. I think that's a critical thing. And I'm not a RuPaul watcher, but I do watch. I do know of his show and have friends that watch it. And he always says at the end of the show, if you can't love yourself, then how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? And that's very important. It's the same thing. Like if you can't love yourself, then you're not going to be able to love anybody else. If you can't truly express yourself, then how are you going to help understand other people's expressions and different things like that? So if you can't relax yourself, then it just kind of goes on and on. It's just this ladder effect and trickle down effect. So yeah, it's completely, I completely agree with you 100%. Very wise words. We need to stop living through other people and live through our own lives and really focus on ourselves before we start focusing on other people's lives. And I think that's a really, really good place to kind of wrap things up. We came down on a really good conversation. So thank you for your time. And yeah, absolutely. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. It's great connecting with you as well. So how can the listeners follow you, Jason and or Black Ora?
Yeah, so you can follow me and my music journey and my life journey at Alynn. It's ALYNN Golden Angel. I know it's like such a silly Instagram handle name. And then my brand is black, just the color black .ORA on Instagram, and we also have a Facebook as well, which is just Black Ora, but it's spelled ORA.
And I will put all of those links in the show notes as well, so everybody can easily access them and then follow you and reach out to you if they have any questions about what you had said in the show or even about Black Ora. Cool. So thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. It was great connecting with you. We had a great conversation, and I'm very excited to release this episode with everybody.
Thank you so much, Lennon. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. Miss Andrea was such a genuine person, and I enjoyed hearing how she really enjoys kind of bringing artists together and building a community and giving them a platform to connect and build their fan base so they can kind of lighten the load on themselves. Because being an artist, especially an independent artist, when you're just kind of starting out, it can be difficult. And finding those shows in the right venues and the communities and things like that can be very difficult and very stressful for artists. I can imagine, like, for me, being a singer-songwriter, if I were to do that, it would be difficult for me. I know I would have a tough time doing it. It would be stressful, and sometimes you would run into roadblocks. So it's very pleasing to hear and see people like Andrea and her husband, Jason, doing things like this with companies like Black Ora. So if you have any questions for Miss Andrea, the social media links to her account and her singer-songwriter account will be in the show notes below. I also want to remind you to subscribe to my mailing list because it helps me notify you when new episodes are live. I would also encourage you to subscribe to the Patreon account, which allows me to kind of give back to you and put all the money back into the show so I can make it better for you. If you listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts, I would appreciate greatly you to leave a 5-star rating and review on the show, as it helps it boost the ratings and kind of be discovered by new listeners. And lastly, if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, there is a link to the guest request form in the show notes as well. So please fill that out or send it over to your friend or boss or colleague or friend or cousin or whoever, and I will reach out to them if they are a good fit for the show. So thanks again for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Miss Andrea Bonaparte, and I will see you next week on When Life Hands You Lemons.